All right, I hope everybody can hear me. We're going to be starting in just a second. Um, so hopefully, if anyone has trouble hearing me, please let me know. I have gotten complaints, mostly from my mom, about the lighting. We will work towards fixing that, but when that becomes fixed, I hope it doesn't affect the content of what we talk about today or in any of our sessions. But hopefully, the lighting will look more attractive in the future. So we're at around the time when we're supposed to start, but I do see a lot of people happen to be joining the room right about now. So I guess I'll begin with a short introduction. Again, for anyone who missed my first lecture or aren't super well acquainted of who I am, so that anyone who does arrive later doesn't sort of miss out on any real information and more so just missed out on this introduction of mine. So hello everyone, I'm Kevin. I'm going to be leading this sort of town hall Q&A session tonight, and I'm very excited to speak to all of you. I'm very honored that so many of you are interested in this this little bio course that I'm teaching, and so I would just like to thank everyone for being here tonight at such an hour of the evening. I hope it's not too late for anybody. I am the course head, sort of the instructor. I'm going to be writing all of the educational material that was in the class as well. I'm also responsible for determining the curricula, of course, along with my other teaching staff who's here tonight, Joseph. And I will be grading and tracking your students' progress as well. For tonight's Q&A session, we have some questions that people have sent in, and I will obviously get through all of those. But if anybody has other questions, feel free to either use the raise hand function in Zoom, or to either private chat me or Joseph, or to even send your questions directly into the everyone chat. I will sort of get us all started by sending a short message. By sending a short message to the everyone chat, where you can feel free to ask questions. For anyone curious about your students' educational experience, I sort of always try to keep an eye on the chat in the side so that I can monitor if people have questions or anything. So I'm very comfortable and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Now, if I don't get to your question this evening, know that it is not because I didn't want to, but perhaps I'm dealing with too high a volume of questions at any given point. I will also say that tonight I will be answering everyone's questions in English. So if you do have a question in Mandarin, to please send the question in over WeChat so it can be translated for me. And I apologize for that. My Chinese is not quite as fluent as it probably should be. I hope everyone is again doing well. I think we have a fair number of people who are here this evening, and I'm going to begin with some of the questions that were sent to me earlier this evening. Again, if anyone has any questions at any point, please send it in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. So one question we have received is about the scheduling of the USABO competition. The USABO competition, of course, takes place in multiple rounds, but the first round, of course, everything is still a little bit up in the air due to the present situation regarding the virus that we're dealing with. But assuming that things in the education system has largely returned to normal, currently, if you go to usabo-trc.org, you will be able to see the schedule for the USABO online. And the open exam is to be administered sometime between the 9th and the 20th of February, with the semifinal exam following about a month or two later in April. And these are administered through your school. So for anyone whose school doesn't have like a USABO club or a teaching advisor, make sure your student gets that set up. And if they need any assistance with that, we're happy to help. And also, if I look this way, again, don't think it's because I'm looking away from the screen. I have a second monitor here that I'm referring to documents from. So I hope everybody can understand. The first question I see in the chat this evening is from Sri. I'm not very good with Chinese names, but so if I butcher your name, I deeply apologize. But the last class of this first series will be on the 19th of September, and it will be a review session for the material that we've covered in the latter half of this course. And that's a great transition, actually, to a second set of questions that I have been asked, which is about how many classes are there total? Well, there's 20 weeks of classes, and for the first session, they end on the 19th of September. The second session will then resume not long after that, and we'll determine the scheduling based off of the current situation with schooling and availability of students as the school year / semester begins. So we don't have that scheduling currently completely set in stone, but the class will happen, and it will be sometime in the fall, with ideally us finishing the course by the time the open exam is administered. Yeah, there should be enough months. So again, feel free to continue asking questions in the chat. That's great. Thank you so much for getting things started. Oh yes, the link. It's here. I will paste it. So this is specifically the link to the calendar. But on USABO-TRC, they do have access to plenty of other information about the exam as well. The next question I got is, how many years of Olympiad teaching experience do I have? And what is the average % of students who can pass finals? So that's a little bit of a, Yunling, I will get you a question right away, right after this one. So to answer, I've been teaching USABO since I graduated from high school, and that would be around 5 years ago. It's been quite a while. For students whom I haven't had I have generally, after my first year teaching, I've had about one student a year make finals. And I usually take anywhere between 3 to 5 students a year. So making finals, the last round, is very difficult. I'll talk a little bit about that. So USABO is structured into 3 fundamental rounds. Right? We have the open exam, that's, as it says, open to everybody. The open exam usually has about 10,000 students. The number has been increasing over the years, 10 to 11,000 students who take it. And then the top 500 will qualify for the semifinal exam, which again takes place in April, whereas the open exam takes place in February. The semifinal exam is a much longer and more intensive exam. And despite more people despite a larger percentage of students actually making it to the next round, it's very difficult to qualify for finals. So the top 20 to 21, sometimes 22 students will make it to finals. And the reason why I say up to 21, 22 is because sometimes they'll allow an extra person in if the scores are really close. So we'll make the final training camp, which is a 2-week, I'd say all expense paid, but you do have to self-pay for travel. A training camp that's now held at UC San Diego, I believe. Back in my day, it was at Purdue University, where you receive training on what you'll expect to see on the IBO, International Biology Olympiad. And then on the final 2 days, you will compete to see who will make it to the International Biology Olympiad. I've had one student qualify for the International Biology Olympiad. Well, 2 actually, sorry, I forgot about one of them, but one of them did qualify in Canada. It was a little different. I've had one USABO student qualify for USABO. So that's the general structure. I hope that clarifies it for you, Yuling. Next, Shi Yang's question about, sorry, my Chinese is not great. The second section of this course will cover the second half of the book. If you look at our syllabus, you see that we only cover about halfway through Campbell's. So it's not repetitive. It's meant to be a continuation of the first course. And we recommend you take both courses, sequentially, and that's the recommendation. It's just we wanted to fit the course in a shorter time period, but I'd rather be thorough than to sort of rush the teaching of material. So to answer B. Gao, the difference between school registration and student registration. So every single school has to register in order to receive the exam. So the exams are mailed to schools, usually through a registered teacher. Now, the definition of school is a little loose. Tutoring centers and the like are often able to get their hands on the exam, although I know that they have been sort of cracking down on that in more recent years. And then the students register themselves to qualify for taking the exam. So if your student doesn't register, and the school does, they still can't take the exam. And if a student registers but their school doesn't, they can potentially find a different site to take the test at. Although I highly recommend taking the test at your local high school, whatever high school your student attends. Another question, how much of a difference is between this course and AP Biology? Well, that's a great question. This course is not meant to be AP Biology. The material we cover goes far deeper and isn't aimed at the AP test specifically. That's not to say that taking this course will mean that you won't do well in AP Biology. AP Biology is much, much easier than the material that we are covering. So you can imagine sort of, if AP Biology is here, we'll cover everything that's on the AP exam, and then, and a little extra to bring it up here. For Irene, if a student isn't taking a bio class, he or she can still feel free to take the exam. Some schools may have policies about that, but generally it's open to anybody. We will cover all of the chapters from Campbell's. That doesn't mean, for Sarah Z, we'll cover all of the chapters from Campbell. That doesn't mean that we will cover every chapter to the same degree of detail. Some chapters are objectively less important for exams, like the protist chapter or the chapter on animal reproduction, because they're just not things that are tested on, but we will cover them for the sake of completeness. So this course, different from an AP course, is that we are also similar to an AP course. We are aimed at an exam, but the exam is very different and much more comprehensive. So to answer your question, we will cover all of the chapters from the book, but some of them to a lesser degree. Linda Yang, for your question about when to register and the process of registering, your school probably has a teacher who's familiar with it if the exam has been administered before. But if not, registration has to happen before January. So it opens in October. So you can feel free to have your student ask a teacher who they know, say, would you be willing to proctor this exam? The fee we can source from students who are interested in taking the exam. That's usually, back when I sort of ran the Biology Olympiad Club at Troy, that's what we did. We would ask every student who wants to take the exam to pay, I think it was $10, and that more than covered our fees and allowed us to do some other activities as well for the biology club. You do need to have a teacher sign off on it, though. Irene's question about how to study or read Campbell. So I think it's different for every student. Every single student has their own study methods. They have their own way that best helps them learn. For me, one of the best things that helped me learn was to just read the book, many times over and over. And that's because I love reading. Right? Every time I read, I would find something new and be really cool for me. But that doesn't work for every student. Some common strategies that some of my friends and peers employed included, some people really like to highlight certain parts of their book. Right? They'll go through the highlighter and actually physically highlight. Now, I understand that can be very destructive to the textbook, and it sort of hurts its resale value as somebody who buys and sells textbooks sometimes. Some people like to take extensive notes. You can outline each chapter as you read. I would say for this class, read the book before each lecture and then watch the lectures through. If some students aren't good at taking notes while listening to the lecture, they tell them to just focus on listening. And then afterwards, the recording is available, so they can go through the lectures more slowly or at their own pace and take notes and try to remember what they want and take away what information that they're interested in. Well, not everything important, but take away the most important information from the lecture. To answer, and I don't know your name because you come up as G7 Thin Q. Students actually are able to take the exam if they're younger than ninth grade, but you cannot qualify for finals, I believe is a technical rule. A lot of eighth graders do qualify for the semifinal exam. Oh, sorry, Sally. I will rename you to Sally so that I know who you are in the future. But yeah, so anyone can sit in on the exam. For Sharon, it's hard to say what percentage of questions are covered by Campbell's because the questions, oftentimes will never directly say, oh, what is A? Where the definition of A is in the book. They'll ask you to apply your knowledge in creative ways, right? They'll take multiple things from the book and ask you to synthesize your knowledge to answer the question. And this includes knowledge from chemistry books and from physics that they may not necessarily get directly from Campbell's. So I would say that with Campbell's, if assuming you have a basic, high school knowledge of science and you've read Campbell's well and very thoroughly, 100% of the questions should be answerable on the open exam. And I think about 80% to 90% of the questions on the semifinal should be easily answerable. Again, with the SAT subject test, we're not for Yunjie, we're not directly aiming to help students study for the exam, but if you take a course, you will be more than well prepared for that exam. So to answer Sharon's question, our course is simultaneously deeper and broader than the AP. The AP doesn't really focus a lot anymore on evolutionary biology or on phylogenetics, which are topics that we still cover on the USA BO. So we will cover those in great detail. We will also cover many more topics than are available on the AP. For Zhang Li, I mentioned that there are more materials, but I will generally provide, when I say more materials, I meant that I will cover more information than what's in the book. There are other books you can study from, but I always say, if you don't know everything in Campbell's very well, there's no point in moving on, right? Better to be thorough with this one book than to sort of become distracted by other books. And that comes from many years of teaching a lot of students. Whenever students get excited, they say, oh, Kevin, I really want to study, anatomy in more detail. Can you recommend an anatomy book? And I do. What usually ends up happening is students get distracted and they end up learning a lot of information that might help them for a few questions when they're neglecting information in other areas that are in Campbell's that would help them with more questions. I always say, I'm not going to recommend any books until I see that you can consistently do very well in the open and are scoring very well in the semifinal exam, right? So I'm not going to say exactly what books you can use. There's a huge list after the course. I'm happy to share them, especially if your student does very well. But I would think your student should focus on the book and focus on the material that we present in class. And any additional information, we will obviously teach, and I will answer in office hours, and the various other things will be available to you. There will potentially be some handouts for certain information that we think might be difficult to convey only through lecture. So look out for that as well. Jenna asked, are you revising your class and share with students for reinforcing the study? I'm not quite sure what you mean by revising. I am constantly looking through my own notes and trying to see what strategies work best for students. And, I'll try to obviously, share with them anything I learn or any information. And I'm trying really hard to foster, a good community for studying in this class as well. Joseph and I were working on setting up a Discord server, which is a popular sort of social media chatting service that school-age students like to use, and also harbors a lot of communities for USA BO study as well as other subjects. We hope to start our own. People can share questions and talk about the homework, etc. For Sam, yes, I do say the 8th edition isn't good. The differences are very slight. The 8th edition just had a few very notable errors, and it is not like, I can't quite remember exactly what they are. There's a few captions that are printed incorrectly. The only reason I say to not use the 8th edition is because the 8th edition has those errors, and I would hate, as I said in my lecture, for anyone who's reading the book to accidentally read something that's misprinted and think, oh, that's how it is. it should be okay 99% of the time. Just have, if your student sees anything that they think is weird, just make sure they come to us and we'll explain whether it's correct or not. But 8th is fine. It just isn't written quite as well as some of the others and has a few errors in it. Oh, yes, we are recording. Sorry, Jenna. We're recording, and the recordings are posted on Canvas and available to the students. If you have questions specifically about how to access them, please message Joseph. There is a question about the subject distribution in the open exam. It's been quite a while since I think they officially follow like a breakdown of what questions sort of belong to which category. But generally speaking, historically, we sort of saw, the two biggest categories are molecular biology and genetics, and anatomy and physiology, which sort of make up about 30% each for 60%. And then 20% of the test is plant biology. And then we have another 10% that's evolutionary biology, and then 5%, ecology, and then sort of 3% like biosystematics. So 3% biosystematics, and then like 2% ethology, which is animal behavior. So that was the historic distribution. But the distribution today, there's no formal distribution anymore, and they do follow the IBO convention at finals, but in the earlier rounds, open and semifinal, they do not. The homework is aimed to be completable from Irene. That's how long the homework will take for each lesson. The homework, we aim for it to take anywhere between, if your student is really familiar with the material, maybe even as little as 30 minutes to about an hour. This first assignment, I personally think, is fairly straightforward. Some of the later assignments will be a little bit more difficult or sort of require more critical thinking. This first assignment was pretty straightforward for anyone whose student has already attempted the exam, the questions. For LZ, I don't think, I haven't heard about the USABO being any different. Joseph, if you know anything, please let everyone know. But I haven't heard about it being necessarily very different. It's changed from the time when I first took it, and they had a few minor changes. They have introduced multiple true false, which are no longer on the open exam, I believe, and are only in semifinals. But other than that, the exam is largely the same. There are some talks about the exam potentially being online or administered differently because of the current virus situation, but that I don't think will have any major impact on us. For BGAL, we have access to most of the previous year's old open exams and semifinal exams and other exams, and we will administer them as well as sort of exams that we are currently working on compiling ourselves. So yes, the short answer is yes, we do have quizzes and mock exams. For Sarah Z, Sarah Z is asking about how effective I think flashcards are for memorization. Flashcards are amazing. They're really great for memorizing things for rote memory. And there are some things that are much more helpful to just have rote knowledge of than it is to sort of have like a broad or deep understanding of a particular topic. But I'm hesitant to say start right now. I haven't explicitly said that there's anything a student should memorize yet. There's only a few things I think that are useful to memorize. I think the vast majority of things, it is far more useful to have an understanding of the subject matter, and then the information should come naturally after. But for memorization in general, flashcards are great. For Ninglei, how long will the videos be posted? I believe they'll be maintained until the end of the course. We do have limited hosting, so I don't think they can be hosted forever, and we will try to have them up as long as possible. We may take them down to encourage students to actually come to lecture if we see an issue from that. I see that Hosanna has unmuted themselves. Would you like to ask a question?
Sorry, what accidentally, yeah.
Oh, okay, no.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And if anyone feels more comfortable asking a question, I can understand the Mandarin. So if you want to ask a question by Mandarin, I feel free to say it into the phone, and I'm happy to answer. Didn't mean to single you out. I thought you wanted to say something. From Sharon about this year's cutoff score being quite low, I don't exactly know what happened because the exam isn't available to me. But I think generally the tests are getting harder and harder over the years. There is also a current sort of transition happening between administrators for the USA BO, and potentially the new administrator has let more difficult questions onto the open exam than before, which could potentially be which could potentially explain part of why it was lower than usual. And yes, exactly. So the question is, does questions require more analysis using knowledge on Campbell's in a creative way? And yes, the questions do require you to be a little more creative and to not sort of repeat information, which is why flashcards are great, but they will not get you to that semifinal or final status oftentimes. And lastly, some questions, and some in a larger number now than before, do cover material from outside Campbell's, which I will aim to cover. But many questions which might at first seem like they're outside of Campbell's can actually be answered if you just apply knowledge that you get from the book itself. Yes, so to answer the first assignment that we had, I wrote my opinion generally is a lot of homework that's given in schools is meant to kind of, I don't want to be insulting, but to waste time, right? Oftentimes, they're just making students do the same problem over and over again. And I think there's no point. I want to write really challenging questions that I think if you think hard enough, you should be able to figure out on your own. To make you think, and then as you think, right, you learn these processes about thinking about the question and about sort of applying your knowledge, so you learn from the homework itself. I do think some of the questions are a little difficult if you don't have any background in chemistry. I will admit that this first assignment is challenging, but also we have office hours, and during office hours, we will go over all the questions students had trouble with. So the goal is that there is no reason for you to get a question wrong because office hours are available to everyone. And if your son has trouble, he can feel free to email us, and I'm really happy to answer questions or provide additional resources. I'm sorry if he feels sort of like it's very difficult. It's designed to be that way. I spent a lot of years, obviously in college, and I felt like in college I would learn so much more because my assignments weren't just a ton of busy work. They were designed to really make me think, and I think that really helped me. So I hope to emulate that here with the assignments that I give. I notice it's very few questions. I'm not writing a ton of questions for each topic. I'm aiming to make you think deeply about each question. It's nothing wrong if they don't get the question right away, but encourage your son to spend more time thinking about it and to engage with us at office hours and through email. And in the future, when the Discord is up and running, hopefully we will be able to engage with them there as well. Yes, so Vivian asked, sorry, I didn't mean to expose you. Yes, I'm trying to teach, I mentioned a lot in my classes this idea of biological intuition, right? It's easy for me to say, memorize all the amino acids, all the vitamins, all these species. That's really easy to say. But as a teacher, and frankly, while you're paying me, you're not paying me to tell you this. You're paying me to teach a student how to think. And, if anything I've learned from, my college experience is that the knowledge you gain is invaluable. But if that's all you get from something, you can just read a book. As a teacher, I hope to give students an idea of how to think about the questions and how to approach them. And so this way, even on things that maybe, because I can't possibly teach everything, right? There's going to be questions about really obscure research that I can't possibly cover. Even if I don't cover those, the student will be able to think about the question and say, okay, well, it's the same system, and apply that knowledge. So hopefully, I hope that's what I'm trying to teach in this course. But not chemistry. How would I do? So Chun Ping Zhang asks, if you haven't taken chemistry at all, you take biology, how well will you do? You can do very well. You can do extremely well. There might be a few questions that aren't going to be quite as easy. I teach this course assuming you've had some chemistry, and that's going to be much more important in the first couple of chapters because we start off very small on the molecular level, and obviously chemistry is useful there. But to be honest, the majority of information does not require chemistry. So chemistry is not, it helps. It definitely helps with thinking about biology, thinking about biological systems, but it's definitely not a necessity. So there's a question about the minimum hours commitment to take this course. I think, if you want to just take the course, that's obviously 2 hours of lecture a week. I highly recommend going to the office hours. If you don't go to them, at least engage with the course for that 1.5 hours, so 3.5 hours there. If you're reading the chapters I assign, you should be able to do the readings in about 2 hours if your student is a fast reader. And then about an hour for the, so I would say about 6 to 7 hours a week at the minimum. But I will say that if you're trying to spend the minimum amount of time to take this class, you may not get as much out of it. It shouldn't really take more than 7 hours, I think, aside, including lecture and office hour time. But yeah, that's my recommendation, is that your students spend, spend as much time as they need, which could be longer and it could be shorter. This course is very fast. We're trying to cover what should be a year-long course in half a year, so the course is going to be very fast. Yes, middle school students can take the open exam. We went over for Xiao. I thought we posted the answer key, but the answer key will be posted by the end of the week. For the benchmark test, Joseph can probably speak more to that. If a student hasn't taken AP Biology yet, she can feel free to take the course this year. However, the course might be challenging. But again, if she, if she studies hard and she, engages with the course, like asks questions, goes to office hours, she should have no trouble. Yeah, so Yuenja asked about with Biology Olympiad for other countries like Canada and Britain. The material is all the same, and USA BO is by far the hardest in terms of its difficulty. USA BO semifinal tests are often at the same level of difficulty as the final exams for other countries' national Olympiads, as the ones that I'm familiar with and are in English. I've tutored students in Canadian Biology Olympiad before. My methods do work. One of them did make IBO, so it does seem, so I think it'll be helpful. For Janet so Janet's asking on the behalf of Jingjin about the textbook. I highly recommend that you buy the textbook. You can download it, but I'm not supposed to say where you can, but Google. But I really like personally, and I have my book right here. Well, you can't see it, but it's over here. I have a little music stand with my book on it. I love having a physical book because it's so much easier to focus when you have that. But a lot of students I know today prefer to have digital books. So that's perfectly right. And again, the student I think a student of any level can take this course as long as they're willing to engage. Obviously, if a student is in 6th grade or 7th grade and they have never had any higher level science, maybe wait a year or two. But most students who are in high school who are ready to learn and are willing to engage with at least taking some biology, I think will be fine to do this course. So for Sarah, we've already set the course of this. We've already set the pace of this course to be, I think, pretty intense. I ask you to read 2 to 3 chapters a week, which is quite a lot if you're trying to read them thoroughly. I would say, if you read a chapter in an hour, that's great, but you may not necessarily learn everything. But it obviously depends, right? Like on how, different students, how fast they read and how well they absorb information. So I will say, if you get through everything we have to cover, read ahead, keep reading, and you can ask me questions from stuff that's ahead. I might say, wait till we have the lecture and we'll talk about it, but I'll generally try to answer any difficult questions that you may have. So for KW, you should participate in USABO starting as early as you can. The more experience, the better, right? Because you get used to the testing, you get used to the environment, and you know, it's a culture as much as it is an exam. And for another question, what would you recommend when reading the book or taking the test first? I recommend, I'm not sure the question means would I recommend reading the book first or taking the test first, but I think what they're saying is what would I recommend for the first-time test taker or first-time reader of the book, and I would say it's to be mindful and to be careful about what you're reading. I think actively, right? If the book says proteins have 4 levels of folding, think about, well, what differentiates these things, right? If the book presents concepts A and B and they seem similar, think carefully about why they're different, right? And just be very thoughtful about what you're reading and what things mean, right? Focus on terminology and focus on understanding general, broad concepts rather than specifics. And then on your second run through and during lecture, hopefully, we will cover the specifics and details in a way that's more palatable. I'm sure there are for Shiyan, who asks about the difference between Campbell 10 and 11, I'm sure there's differences, and I'm sure they're very minor. It doesn't really impact the progress of for our course, because everything that's super important I will cover, and everything is sort of broad strokes, right? There might be specific differences. Maybe one book talks more specifically about immunoglobulins, and one book focuses a little bit more on antibody titer as a whole. So not a huge amount of difference. Chun Ping Zhang asks, when did I start to become interested in competing in the USABO, and how much did I prepare as a freshman? So I didn't start really studying. I told the story a little bit during my first lecture. I didn't start studying biology until I was in 9th grade. I had been doing competition math, competition math at the time, and I was very bad at it. I like math a lot more today, but it just wasn't really my cup of tea, you know. And I think it's very straightforward that not everything is for every student, right? And for me, I probably could have been okay at math, but I was never going to be really good at it. And then I, took a course in biology at the time in Irvine, and as a freshman, I really loved biology. I would read a few hours every day because I loved the book so much. It was so interesting to me. So I probably prepared a lot more than most people freshman year. That doesn't mean I got good results. Freshman year, I made semifinal, but I didn't do very well in semifinal exam. And then, so I would say a few hours a day freshman year. That's probably what I would say. For Ning, so currently there's me and Joseph. Currently that's the entire teaching staff. Whether that changes in the future is yet to see. For Irene, a student can take the USABO as many times as they like. There is, I believe, a policy that says you can only attend IBO 2 times, but for the vast majority of people, it is not. That's not an issue. How do I grade the homework? Well, we have points written next to each question based on how correct your answer is. We give you points, and then we take note of where you went wrong, and we'll keep track of that. So while Joseph types up his response to that, can my kid register with you to take the first round of test? Unless you are physically located in Madison, Wisconsin, I don't have the ability to administer the test, unfortunately. You will have to go through your school. Yeah, you have to register through your school or another school. Generally speaking, it has to be an accredited education institute. So I can't offer you the exam, at least at the current time. Perhaps I could potentially, if there's enough interest, reach out to the administrators and see if something could be done. about that. For Min Kathleen, we will cover neuroscience and bioinformatics. The bioinformatics we will be covering, I'm going to aim it towards more modern bioinformatics so that it's more relevant to the exam than the stuff that's actually in Campbell's. And to Ning, yes, students can always email me for questions. I'm really happy to get emails from students. It often is something I'm always excited to answer students' questions. Now, I will say sometimes my answer will be attend office hours, but if a question I feel like cannot be answered, I will answer personally. Yeah, and for the benchmark exam, it's not super important to understand every question on the exam right now, right? The whole goal was to see how much do you know and get an assessment of that. And from what we could tell, you know, there's, yeah, and so again, it's just understanding where you stand, and the answers are more for your personal interest than I think is a good study tool. For BGAL, you can only take the International Biology Olympiad twice. That means you have to first go from open to semis, then go from semis to finals, and then be one of the top 4 finals and make IBO. And you can only go to IBO 2 times. So it really is not relevant to anyone. Nobody I know has ever had that be an issue. So it's not to worry. For Sarah Z, yes, I believe you should talk to Janet about that. Oh, I'm working on the questions pre-submitted through the link. I'll actually get to move on to the next one. So the next question we have on the pre-submitted question is, how do you pay tuition? Once or several payments? And so you know, I'll answer a little bit about that. We are currently accepting payments through 2 methods, either through PayPal. We ideally ask that you don't use a credit card because then there's a big service fee, and we do say that we expect you to cover the service fee. I hope that's all right with everyone. PayPal or Zelle to my an accountant's account where it will be safely taken charge of, and then let us know, and we'll be sure to keep track of everything. $980 should be made in 1 installment if possible. If that proves to be an issue, we can talk, I guess. But please talk to Janet about that information as well. Oh shoot, I just sneeze. All right, it's gone. I guess not. Sorry. And the last, again, the last class will be on September 19th, and $980 will cover 20 classes. For LZ, I highly recommend you do the homework. The student does the homework. If it becomes a really big issue, I guess that's all right. You are paying, in my opinion, a fair bit of money for this course. I think it's important that your student try to get as much out of it as they can. If they don't do the homework, obviously I can't flunk them. They're free to follow the course as they like. But I would love if they did the homework because it helps us track their progress a lot more easily. Most middle schools do not. The question is, do middle schools offer the exam? Middle schools do not generally offer it. You can ask a teacher, and they can, of course, register like any high school can. But if there's not enough interest and you don't want to pay the whole $95 fee yourself, your local high school probably will have something available. For Irene, tomorrow is not you can pay any time, but if you don't pay before Saturday, unfortunately, we will not be sending out the Zoom link to those who have not paid. So we recommend you pay by tomorrow to ensure that you receive the proper Zoom link. Office hours tomorrow will still be open to everybody. For Jen, we unfortunately don't offer refunds. If your student is having a really difficult time with the course, you should have them talk to me by email, where I could try to offer them additional help, but at this time, we do not offer refunds. And for Irene, yes, we will have progress reports. Ideally, I'll have at least one in the middle of the class and at least one at the end to track your students' progress and how they're doing. The more your student engages with me, the more I'll be able to write about it. If your student sort of just sits in class and never participates or anything, it might be a little more difficult, but I recommend, that everyone encourages their student to participate, because I love hearing from students. I love talking to them. If they're shy, have them email me. I'm happy to talk to them one-on-one as much as I can. And yes, for Gao J42, there is a TA session tomorrow that Joseph will be hosting. It's again open to everybody. Yeah, as Janet says, we have already given everybody a trial period of 2 courses, and so you've got a taste of everything the course has to offer. Obviously, the material is going to change, but the structure will not be changing significantly from here on out. In the pre-submitted questions, after finishing sessions 1 or 2, can students take the USA Biology open exam, or are there still gaps to fill in? After taking both sessions, your student should have a pretty comprehensive knowledge, of everything, and they should have no problems. I will have covered all the material, but again, like I say, I can teach something, it doesn't mean that everyone will learn at the same pace, but there shouldn't be major gaps. There might still be small things that perhaps we won't have the time or opportunity to get to. There are some, for example, very specific plant phylogeny that's more advanced than anything this course will cover. That's more aimed for semifinals. But for the open exam, every question should be at least doable. Some of them might be kind of unreasonable, especially modern news questions or ones that put in very specific research. But other than that, there should be no gaps in the student's knowledge. The time between the open exam and the semifinal exam is pretty short. I will consider it, depending on the interest, about holding another session in between the open and the semifinal exam. But whether that happens obviously depends. I think generally the goal will be to have this course, and then over the next year, perhaps design a secondary course to take, which will give you the additional information you need to bridge the gap for semifinal exam knowledge, because teaching it all in sort of like a month or 2 would be very difficult. Number 6, would I limit the number of students enrolled in the class, and if so, how many? Currently, we're not at a point when we feel like it's necessary to either announce a limit or to limit the enrollment. And I would rather make the class accessible to as many students as possible. There's discussion of having more office hours and having additional discussion groups and resources available if the class gets too large. I will aim to make sure every student has reasonable access to an instructor at any given session, whether be it virtually or over Zoom calls. So there's currently plans in place for if the class gets too big that we perhaps increase the teaching staff or increase the number of office hours we hold, but there is no current plan for capping the enrollment. So for Sharon, as I mentioned earlier, the main goal of this course is to not only teach the knowledge necessary for USABO, but also to teach this way of thinking about biology and biological questions in general that will enable a student to see a more difficult question and apply the things they already know, right, to answer the question, right? Think of it similar to like an AMC exam. If no one's teaching you like the math, right? Everyone knows what angles are. Everyone knows there's some maybe some theorems and stuff that are a little harder to learn if you don't take the class. But at the end of the day, they're trying to teach you a mindset. And I want it to be similar for this course, although biology does have a lot more information to cover. So it's a combination of both. This exact series of courses, we probably will plan to offer again next year. The next session will take place in September after the first session has concluded. If that answers your question. So next up, we have the question about prerequisites for the class. Do you mean the students should have completed bio high school program, or in the program will be the only ones getting into G12 bio missing too much to follow? How much chemistry should they have already done? So I think generally we have this idea of a soft prerequisite, right? You know, at Harvard, we have the same thing. You know, we don't have hard prerequisites. There's no idea. You have to take this class before you can take that class. I recommend having some biology background to make following this course easier, right? And as mentioned earlier with chemistry, I recommend having some chemistry to make following this course easier. But if you're engaged and willing to read, I think you can start from a very basic level and be able to keep along with the course. Now, it might take more time, it might take more investment of energy, but anyone can do it. And I think the question really isn't how much do I know now? It's how hard am I willing to work to get knowledge in this class? Someone asked me how many students made finals last year. Well, unfortunately, this year the finals were canceled, so there was no one made it because it didn't happen. But last year, Joseph was my student who made finals actually. So so yeah, I have about one each year, which I personally think is a big accomplishment. I may have had two of them overlap at one point, but I don't quite remember. I've been teaching for quite a while. At your second year of high school, what did you do to improve so much to do very well in the final exam? So as people know, I made my finals for the first time as a sophomore after my second, no problem, Joseph, after my second time of taking the USA BO. And to be honest, I don't know. I think I was just really motivated after taking the semifinals, seeing, oh, this is the level of questions I have to be prepared for. And I've studied a lot of biology that year. I studied a lot for the semifinal as well as for the Science Olympiad because my school competed in it. So so that's, I think, what happened. I just got really motivated from seeing that I could accomplish these things. My goal, actually, my goal for myself was to improve my semifinal score. But actually, I was really shocked when I got the email. At first, I thought it was a joke. I was like, there's no way I made finals. But when I did, it was sort of a very ecstatic experience. And I think, you know, every time, you know, a student takes a harder exam, in my opinion, it motivates them to study harder if that subject is right for them. If you take an exam that's difficult and it doesn't, and you feel demotivated, then perhaps a different subject might be right for you. That does not mean to give up every time you meet something difficult. It's sort of where you get your motivation from. There's a question about how Science Olympiad overlaps with the USA Biology Olympiad. Science Olympiad covers a lot of specific areas, perhaps in more detail than USABO requires. But USABO is much broader. So you can think Science Olympiad is a little deeper in certain areas, but USABO is broader. It covers more of biology. All right, back to our pre-submitted questions. This course is designed for competitions, but how much can this help AP Biology? I answered this a little bit before. For AP Biology, SAT Biology, or I don't know, maybe your student really wants to take GRE Biology. Once you take this course, you should be more than well prepared for those exams. We will not be doing specific test prep for those exams, though. So that's something to keep in mind. If a student likes testing strategies for AP or for SAT2, we won't be teaching those. We'll only be focusing on the USABO exam. But then the knowledge should be there, right? It's like if I teach you how to make a French omelet, it should be very easy for you to be able to learn how to fry an egg, even though I may not specifically say, here's how you fry an egg. So yes. The question is, what other books will help for the USABO open exam other than Campbell? For the open exam, all you need is Campbell. If your student has had no chemistry, maybe a chemistry book, but other than that, you know, it's just having Campbell's all you're going to need. There's a question about how much USABO will help on college admissions and at which level can it help. I've done college admissions for a little bit as well, and I'm very familiar with how the process works, at least to some extent. I know a lot of the admissions officers. They're very nice people. And I will say this, no one activity will say, oh, you know, if you get into this, you will get into Harvard or Stanford or MIT. MIT does have a policy where if you make a USAB, like a USABO training camp or a USA Physics Olympiad, chemistry or math, you're pretty much going to get in. That's pretty much how MIT works. But it's all about having a coherent application. And you know, if your application is very thorough and you say, okay, I love biology, here's why, and you present like a passion, you show that you're passionate, you're interested, you have goals, the student is driven, you're in there interesting and honest, your student will get into a school they not only deserve, but will be very happy at. So it's hard to say what it'll help, but I'm certain it helped me get into Harvard. It's probably one of my biggest accomplishments, and it can help really take your application saying, I like biology, to saying, not only do I like biology, I'm able to be accomplished in biology. We will definitely have at least one, if not two or more, mock USA Bio testing sessions. For a chemistry book I recommend, I personally really enjoyed the Zoomdal chemistry. I like it more than the one they actually used at my high school because it's a lot clearer. And as someone who isn't sort of really chemistry minded, it was definitely more straightforward. So Zoomdal and Zoomdal chemistry. Number 10, is there any place you can find past real test questions? So online, there's sources. I'm not going to say specifically what they are, again, because of copyright issues. I've personally been reached out to by the director of USA Bio telling me not to tell people where to find these exams, but you can find them. Just Google it. You can find them. Additionally, when your school teacher signs up for the exam, they will get access to all of the old exams. I put the name of the chemistry book I recommend in the chat for anyone who's interested. And again, I will provide mock exams as well as potentially a real testing environment opportunity to take the exam in. For number 12, so again, about the duration of the Canvas information, we will keep it up for as long as we can until our hosting runs out. So we'll try to keep it up until the USA Bio exam is over. So that is our goal. Oh, Janet has sent me some questions from additional questions from WeChat. Yes, this class is useful for SAT biology. Again, we'll cover all of the material and more, but if your only goal is to do SAT biology, perhaps there are other courses that would be more specifically helpful. If your sibling who is 2 years younger wants to audit the class, our official policy is that they should probably pay for the class on their own. But if they are too young and you think that they won't really get anything out of having individual attention, I think it'll be fine for them to perhaps sit in. I don't want to encourage this because, again, I don't want this to be like live streamed to 1 million people. Although I don't think anyone will. But they can feel free to follow along and read the book. If they are younger, I recommend maybe starting with an easier book than Campbell, especially if they haven't had any biology. There is Campbell's Concepts and Connections, which is the sort of lower level textbook, fantastic book. One of my professors at Harvard has written a general biology textbook called How Life Works. It's interesting, and I do think it's better for younger audiences in a lot of ways for anyone who's interested. Yeah, the main goal of this class is Biology Olympiad. Not only will I still target this, I have been targeting it since the beginning. Yeah, so there was a big range in how the students scored on the benchmark test. That doesn't change how I'm teaching this course. I'm still teaching this exam at the same level. This simply tells me that there are a lot of students who perhaps may not have the necessary background to take this class. If you can't, I don't know if you might be able to attest, I don't think the level of the course has gone down. In fact, I think I made the course harder. And I'm just going to say, if anyone has trouble following, they should email me and we'll talk, and I'll help them one-on-one, but the level of the course will not go down. I aim to teach this course at a level well above AP Biology. And if anybody is frightened by that, I apologize, but I hope that we provide more than enough resources that shouldn't be a major issue. So again, I mentioned earlier about the homework. My homework isn't written such that, it's to test how well you remember stuff from lecture or to test how well you know material. It's to encourage you to think critically, right? These questions are written to be difficult. You'll have to think about them and then answer them. So if you don't know a question, I recommend think a little harder about it. If you really can't figure it out, go to office hours. When you go to college, that will be how a lot of good classes are structured, where the homework isn't designed to waste your time, right? That's why people who say, I don't want to do the homework, I'm like, well, then you're missing a pretty big component, because on the homework is where I tried to, help encourage you to think even more deeply than we do in class about the concepts that we cover in, the comfort of your own time and space. So homework is due after office hours, so your student are supposed to work on the homework, think about a question, come to office hours where Joseph won't give away answers, but will discuss the questions to try to point you in the right direction, and then you turn the homework in and we grade it. That's the idea. Yeah, so I will say the first couple chapters, I'm not following the book. And I think that's because I think the book is a little too basic. It doesn't cover information that's actually helpful. With chapter 5, we've gone much more on track for how the book is going, and we'll sort of be more on track with the book after the first few chapters, because the first few chapters, admittedly chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, are not really biology. They're more just like background chemistry, so anyone who reads the book can kind of understand it. My goal is to not waste time covering material that I think students should know. If students didn't know the material, they can reach out to us and we will help them. And it's like as the previous part, the level of this course has not gone down. It has stayed exactly the same as I intended for it in the beginning, and it will continue that way. Whether or not I offer a simpler course in the future for lower level students, that's to be talked about, but this course is aimed at students who want to make semifinal and score well on it. The student can always email us, and Joseph and I are working on setting up a platform where they can get more real-time help over Discord. So yes, you can always be in touch with not only me, but also Joseph. I personally see other questions. Sometimes I'll forward them to Joseph to answer, but often I'll answer them myself. So again, email me, kevinbaobiology2020@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer any of your students' questions. From overall goal point of view, do you have some highlights on the testing in recent years and what to know? I think generally the big thing to know is just again, not information, but this idea of how to think about biology that'll help with all the exams. So Sharon asked, besides Campbell's, what other books or knowledge do you need to do well in the semifinal exam? I've had many friends of mine who've made USA Bio say they only ever read Campbell Biology before coming to finals. So I would say really Campbell's, as well as what I'm trying to teach about biological thinking and some additional information, should be all you need. There are other books. If your student does really well in the class, I will be more than happy to recommend those books. But again, usually I find that they're more distracting than they are helpful. The average score in the benchmark test was about an 8. I would say that if your student is scoring, like I said, your student can score anything, and as long as they're willing to put in the work, right? A student who scored a 15 on the exam, a benchmark test, is not going to have to work as hard to learn on the information I'm teaching than a student who scored a 3 on the exam. Now, if you're scoring below like a 5, I would say, think seriously about how much time you have to invest in the class. Because again, as I said, I'm not lowering the level of the course. The course will stay at its current level. And so if you're scoring significantly lower than like I guess any student can take this class. I strongly believe that, right? I think any student, they work hard enough, will be able to learn and to do well. But it's about how much time they have to invest. I would say that if you don't have more than 7 hours a week and you're scoring well below average, like below a 5, maybe reconsider. But again, anyone can take this course. Yeah, so for anyone who missed the first 2 classes, office hours are tomorrow. Even if you have a chance tomorrow morning, take a look at the PSET, the homework assignment. I call them PSET because again, I'm trying to teach this like a college course. And then the benchmark test, there's no point in doing it after. It's not super informative, but the videos are available to watch. So it's like they haven't missed anything. And then we only have the first homework. So they're welcome, and we will help them get up to speed. For a student with no chemistry background and basic biology knowledge, is 6 to 7 hours per week enough to keep up with the class? I say yes. It should be, but again, it varies from student to student, right? It depends on how fast they read, how fast they can do the homework. I would recommend maybe a little more if they have only very basic biology knowledge. But 6 to 7 hours should be enough for everyone as long as they try. And this is including class time, by the way. Yeah. Email me at either kevinbiology@gmail or at Yahoo. So for the next pre-recorded question, what are study strategies? I observed my son didn't take notes when he read books, probably because he doesn't know how to take notes. Can you provide some guidance on how to read the textbooks? Otherwise, it appears boring. It's true. The textbook isn't the most interesting thing in the world. I would say one thing to do is when you're reading, right? Like, you know, think about the like if your student just isn't a literary learner. Some people just aren't great at reading textbooks. You know, maybe the solution is to, you know, have them read the book out loud. I find that often helps. Like, not every subject is as engaging to me as biology. So I read out loud, and then when I hear it, it helps me learn in a different way, right? Some students really like outlining. And for them, it's like a great accomplishment to be able to outline a chapter of a book, right? So like read the book and be like, okay, here's the main points. Here's my key takeaway from this section. And Campbell is already written in an outline sort of fashion. So that's my recommendation. And for studying, you know, everyone is different, whatever works for them. Some people, I never took notes. Notes just weren't my thing. I found a bunch of things to listen and then to read, and then I would keep doing it over and over again until I got it. Maybe that isn't the most efficient method, but that's what worked for me. So it depends. It's different for everybody. The question, my preferred method currently is email. You can also ask me on Canvas, or you can, when again, I keep mentioning we have a Discord that we're setting up. And once that is set up, that will also be a way. But for now, yes, the preferred method to communicate with me is by email. Is the homework required or optional? Do I grade it? The answer is the homework is optional, but strongly recommended. To me, I don't know why you would take this course and not do the homework, because I tailor every homework specifically to the things we talk about in class. So I hope that everyone, you know, does it, because I put a lot of work into it. But if you are too busy, I understand. We will grade every assignment. There will be feedback on it, sort of saying, well, here's what you did wrong. Here's here's the issue. So it will be given back, and we will keep track of it for our progress reports. So yes, we can. If you want to be notified about a student's homework progress, let Janet know, and we can set up like an email list for that. Additionally, if a student isn't doing homework, after about maybe a week or two, I will email the parents about it. And if the parent says, oh, they don't have to do the homework, then I'll stop communicating. But if you say, oh, well, please keep an eye on it, I will keep an eye on it. So let me know, and I will let you know if the homework isn't done. The next question is about moving office hours to a better time. Friday, 3:30 to 4:30, may conflict with some school activities. Can students ask questions to the class anytime by email? Yes, you can ask me questions anytime by email. If office hours don't work super well for you, I'm really sorry. We try hard to make this not conflict with other classes, as well as find a time that works across the nation. So it's been difficult, and you know, if you can even come in for 30 minutes, we would really appreciate it. If there is enough enrollment, we will open a second office hours. But at least for now, this is the current time, and we apologize deeply for anyone who can't make it. I was like, they are recorded, and if you have questions, again, feel free to email us. We're getting to almost the end of our pre-recorded questions, and if sort of there's a die down of, I'm happy to stay as long as necessary, but if there's other questions, again, you can always feel free to ask Janet on WeChat or to email me, and I will respond as soon as I can. For Kelly, while I set a limit on class capacity, there is currently no limit. We don't see enrollment exceeding our expectations, but my goal is to be able to teach as many students as possible. If the class becomes too big, we have logistical plans in place to make more resources available to the students rather than limiting the class size. But if it does get too big, we will set a limit, but I don't see that happening right now. there's a question about homework reminders. Joseph and I will send out announcements about getting the homework done, but homework will be due every Saturday at noon to give us time to turn things in if we need to work on it after office hours. I do think part of it is that students should try to be responsible for completing their own assignments. So we won't sort of send out reminders all the time, but we will at least the first few times definitely remind everyone. Yes, thank you guys for being so kind. I have two more questions on the submitted questions that I will answer. The first one is, my daughter is currently a ninth grader and will study chemistry in the next school year. Should she prepare any basic chemistry concepts? Now, we've covered a big portion of the basic chemistry concepts that will be that we will need. There's a few more like stoichiometry, thermodynamics that we will cover a little bit later. If she has time, maybe read up a little bit on specifically those two concepts, thermodynamics, stoichiometry, but other than that, we'll cover everything at a basic level. And if your student has questions about chemistry, email us. As I said over and over again, email us. I'm so happy to answer. And then lastly, for knowledge covered in class but not in Campbell, how can one student grasp the information firmly? I would say we have the lecture video. Repetition is a great way to learn, but also email and engage, right? When you sort of get into it, when you talk to us, have a conversation, it's so much easier to remember, right? If you just see me as someone who sits in my chair and says things at you, it can be really hard to remember. But if you email me and we talk, I think it'd be much easier to think this is a conversation and be much better to remember. Jen asks, if we take the class a second time, is it the same material you teach in the same homework? I don't know if you mean by the second session. Like I said, the second session will be different. The homework will probably be similar, but I will change the homework each time to focus it on specifically what we cover in class, right? If one year the students are particularly interested in viruses, maybe I'll ask more virus questions. Maybe one year the students are interested in cancer, I'll maybe have more questions about cancer, right? So it'll be similar, but it won't be quite the same. The general idea of what we're covering will be the same. What the second time I plan to teach this course in a year. So we're so far out from that, and whether I open a more advanced or a more basic course, that's still up for discussion. But that's yet to be seen. So the answer is yes, but with some small changes. This is not the first time I've given online classes. I've been teaching one-on-one classes for a while, but I'm moving to this group course session in part motivated by the current situation. I know a lot of students, miss having the chance to study in a group setting. School for me was a great sort of solace. It was I loved going to school. I loved learning with my peers. So I hope to give them at least something similar to that experience while everyone's sort of stuck at home. But this is sort of the first large online class that I've ever taught. Of course. I'll stay until, I'll stay for another 7 or so minutes, perhaps. And if nobody really has questions, thank you all so much for coming. I hope to see as many of you enroll in the course as possible. I would love to be able to have the honor of teaching your student. But if not, I do hope I do hope you all have the best of luck with all of your endeavors. The question about homework is seeming a little difficult. The homework, again, is designed to be difficult. I'm trying to ask fewer questions that take more thought. So if they have questions, please email me or attend office hours. Sally, yes, feel free to unmute yourself and ask and ask whatever question you like.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I just thought that I'm leaving. Since a lot of people start leaving, so I'm just gonna take this opportunity to ask you something a little bit long to write it, but probably easier to ask. Is that I do notice that the most effective way to actually get to reach some of the major milestone in biology or anything is actually get the right kind of study method instead of sort of best way to kind of fit for the kids. So I'm just wondering that in terms of, because this classes definitely have a lot of this very advanced topic, right? Will you
Yeah.
be able to kind of, periodically kind of remind them what's the best way to kind of like taking notes? What's the best way to review a particular topic? Or like, in the way kind of like giving a little bit ancillary kind of, help
Mm.
besides, carrying this, but also teach them a little bit of, best way, lessons learned, best practice in terms of, taking on this advanced class. So
Yeah, of course. And I know that this course is probably a fair bit more challenging than what many school curricula offer. I think the big thing for me, and again, like I was saying about this entire evening, it varies from student to student. For me, the big
right,
thing is thinking about why I care about a certain topic really helps, right? So saying, oh, there are proteins, but what is so important about knowing the tertiary structure of protein? What's so important? And then saying, how does this concept link to a different one, right? Like I said about being mindful, that applies to beginning students, but also the students who maybe haven't thought carefully about, well, what is the specific difference between the role of B cells and T cells? And then to sort of apply, thinking from other parts of the book, saying, anatomically, this makes sense, but developmentally, here's how they're different. Well, evolutionarily, why do we have these two individual pathways, right? So to think carefully about things, I think, is one of the best things to do.
exactly,
Yeah.
right, right,
Additionally, every single subject, I think, has their own unique elements. And we've been covering mostly chemistry, and for that, I personally don't have a ton of like tools. I just know it because I've been doing biology for so long. But as we get on to later sections, I'll say, here's good things to notice about certain things, patterns you should recognize, trends that are going to be useful. So those are things I plan to mention in my lectures, and I've got a lot of feedback about that. I will try to include some more general advice on how to know things, how to remember things for various like parts of the book. Uh,
that's great, that's great. Because I do find over the years that the best, not just there's certain things that a certain method approach that kids start developing at a younger age can not only just be beneficial to say taking on a particular course like this one, but also later can be applied to so many different things when they go to like college, when they write dissertations, do advanced degrees, when they even apply job situations, right? Like able to connect the dots and discover things rather than, follow other people's instruction, try to internalize things and see the kind of core reason why we're doing certain things that actually is much more important, way beyond just to, try to accomplish like, get to the semifinal or finals. So
yeah, exactly. And like I said this in my first lecture, which was a little sort of cheesy, but I really want everyone to uh, I want everyone to leave this course with not only an appreciation for what I teach, but for biology as a whole, and for their studies in the future, that if they can keep a little bit of the mindset I teach, there's a way to think about subjects, and I think that's why it's so important for interdisciplinary
absolutely.
learning. So I hope to take away a little bit of that. I'm so glad that you can appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I do. And I'm not going to, I know it's getting late and I do appreciate it. This is a great comfort to know that you actually also, kind of as a instructor, as a coach, that you see that as well. So that's great. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm very flattered. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a wonderful evening.
Have a great evening to you too. And again, to everyone else, have a great evening as well. I'm going to answer a few more questions before going for the night. I hope everyone is all right with that. Sharon asks in the chat, homework is going to stimulate students to analyze what they have learned. Is it conceivable that there are many knowledge/skills in 2 or 3 chapters? How to help a student to check to find out they have missed anything? Well, it's hard to say if you've missed anything at all, right? Because as we all agree, there are so many things to understand. But if you attend office hours and you do the homework, when you after doing the homework, if you feel like you've gained something, that's already a great first step. And as we move on, when we start giving quizzes and like practice exams, hopefully when you're finally able to apply the knowledge on your own, you will see that you've learned. And then when that happens, if you have gaps in your knowledge, that's the perfect time to fill them. So that's what I have to say. It's hard to say at any given time, oh, do I know everything? It's very difficult, obviously. But we will try to fill in all those gaps. The lectures are meant to be pretty comprehensive of what we're covering. So I hope that helps. Oh, God. Yeah, a little crick in my neck. But and I'm so happy to see everyone here, and I do hope that everyone has a fantastic evening. You know, as they say, speak now or forever hold your peace. So if anyone else asks any questions, either by audio or by text, please do so in the next couple of minutes. Otherwise, I will sign off for the evening, and I will hope to see many of your students in class on Saturday night. Yes, and again, for anyone who has lingering questions or lingering doubts or any thoughts they might have, again, feel free to reach out by email. I'm very responsive. I've tried to be very responsive. I'll try to come within a day or two if I can. Fridays are not. I may not be able to sleep because I'm often working extra hours on Fridays. So if anyone has any questions, again, you know, speak now or forever hold your peace. It seems like everyone is kind of wrapping up for the night. For anyone who stayed from beginning to the end, or anyone at all, thank you all so much. Have a great evening, and I look forward to working with all of you in the near future. Have a good night, everyone.